You may be wondering why I'm dressed this way. I'm here to tell you a story about a English South African immigrant who, in a late career move, declared himself the Emperor of the United States of America, Joshua Norton. It's a whimsical footnote in American history, but also a story about seizing control of your identity and being the person you wish to be. Our story begins in San Francisco, where Norton moved during the height of the gold rush. Norton pursued his fortune as a commodities trader, and a fortune he made, over $250,000, or $7 million in today's money. But then he met a rice merchant, who offered Norton the chance to corner the rice market during a record shortage. He spent his entire fortune buying the rice merchant's wares, only for another ship full of rice to arrive in the Bay Harbor the next day, followed by another and another and another for many weeks. He had gambled his entire fortune and lost it all. He disappeared from the public eye for many years. But when he returned in 1859, it was to humbly ask a local newspaper to publish the following declaration, which they did under the headline, "An Emperor Among Us." I, Joshua Norton, declare and proclaim myself the Emperor of these United States. And with those words, his reign begun. Norton was a hands-on ruler, patrolling the streets of San Francisco to inspect the state of its infrastructure and the welfare of its people. He was well-versed in governmental matters, well-liked by his subjects, and well-recognized in his regalia, a pawned-off Union Army field officer uniform. Now, I'd like to briefly point out that this replica I'm wearing came with this warning label stating that it would cause cancer and reproductive issues. So I hope you all appreciate the sacrifice I'm making being here tonight. I gave up kids for Pachakacha. Anyways, he completed his uniform with a top hat gifted by a local hat shop, one of many royal favors he received during his life. Admirers sent him ornate walking sticks. When his clothes grew shabby, the San Francisco Board of Supervisors paid to have it replaced. Theaters always reserved seats for him on opening nights, and some businesses offered him free service merely to be associated with him. He didn't solely rely on royal favors, though. He also printed his own money. Nobody believed that these imperial bonds would ever mature and start paying out interest like he promised, but they were an excellent souvenir for tourists. And some businesses, hoping to acquire his patronage, would even accept them as legal tender. When he wasn't stimulating the local economy, he was issuing royal edicts to improve the health of his realm, ranging from disbanding the US government to banning violence between religious sects, from calling for a League of Nations to resolve international disputes to calling for a bridge to be built between San Francisco and Oakland. Those last two of which did come true, though he was never credited for them. Luckily, he did receive some recognition during his life. As he became more famous, neighboring cities invited him to tour their landmarks and officiate building declarations. But my favorite is this 1870 US Census, which gives his occupation as emperor. The elected government recognized a private citizen as emperor. Unfortunately, though, all stories must come to an end, and his came in 1880. An investigation revealed he had no secret wealth or royal lineage, and an autopsy revealed no brain anomalies that would have led to those beliefs. But over 30,000 people visited his body as it lay in state, and his funeral cortege stretched more than 2 miles. That's where his life ends, though, but his legacy endured far longer. The tributes he received in life pale next to the ones that he received after. For example, this solar eclipse that happened the day after his funeral, as if the heavens mourned his passing. But there are other, less cosmic lenses to look at his legacy through. For example, artistic. Many artists have immortalized Norton, most famously Neil Gaiman in his Sandman comics, which is how I and many others learned of his existence. He also inspired stories by Robert Louis Steven and Mark Twain, the latter of whom he was actually personal friends with, as Gaiman depicted. Another is cultural. As Speed Levitch argued on his history travelogue show, Up to Speed, San Francisco's reputation for eccentricity and progressive politics owes a lot to Emperor Norton, the most famous eccentric of his day and a man of forward-thinking values, as his earlier proclamation showed. Others were in support of the women's suffrage movement and for the desegregation of rail cars. Speaking of politics, Norton also inspired one of the largest LGBT organizations in the world, the Imperial Court System. In 1965, Jose Sarria, the first openly gay U.S. candidate for public office, adopted the mantle Widow Norton and founded the ICS as a coalition of charities that raise money through extravagant royal balls. And yet another is historic. Since September 2013, the Emperor's Bridge campaign has dedicated itself to preserving and expanding the historical record of Emperor Norton's life, which began with its flagship mission to rename the Oakland Bay Bridge in his honor, since he was the one who first envisioned it. But let's narrow from the cultural to the individual. Are there any lessons from Emperor Norton's story that can appeal to us on a personal level? I say yes. Two phrases always come to mind when I think of Emperor Norton: constructive delusions and reality by consensus. I'll address those in turn. People called Emperor Norton crazy because of his commitment to his belief that he was emperor, but his self-delusion was just a more extreme version of something we regard as a virtue: self-determination, envisioning who you want to be, then becoming that person. It requires imagination and conviction, which I believe he's an ideal model for. He even follows the psychological model of self-determination theory, which has the following three ingredients: autonomy, competence, and relatedness. He demonstrated his autonomy by creating a new identity, his competence by taking actions to try to improve the state of his community, and his relatedness by concerning himself with his community. And I think that last one is the key to understanding his story, because it's not just about him. It's as much about the people who indulged, supported, and admired him. You can't be an emperor without an empire. The power of a community is to create emperors out of commoners, to uplift and support each other so that we may all fulfill our dreams. And that's a power we all possess if we believe in it. Thank you.